integral part of the entertainment product that football is today. The excitement over the movement of players used to fill the back pages in the summer when domestic football had a break. Now, transfer gossip columns are updated on a daily basis. And while we are familiar with the process that leads to a transfer today, the system has taken many different forms over the last century and a half. The evolution of the system can be best characterized as a tug-of-war between the clubs and the players over who has the bargaining power when it comes to transfers. The momentum has shifted from side to side, but now seems to have come to rest with the players, as illustrated 2 years ago by Neymar's decision to move from Barcelona to PSG against the wishes of his former club. And the origins of the transfer system can be traced back to the 1880s. Before being a football player was a legal profession. Despite clubs paying players being illegal, numerous instances of under-the-counter payments were made by club owners to entice the best players. Owners did not chase profitability, but utility maximization, or in other words, success on the playing field. This is one of the overarching differences between the American sporting model, designed to protect the financial stability of a sports club by avoiding the threat of relegation, and the European model, forever chasing sporting glory despite the financial losses. Because of this phenomenon, before 1885, the players held the bargaining power. As there were no professional contracts, the best players were effectively mercenaries for hire, able to move wherever they wanted, whenever they wanted. The FA, realizing the negative effect club hopping was having on the integrity of their competition, decided to take action. The result was the professionalization of football in 1885, which required all professional players to be registered with the FA. This birthed the retain and transfer system, with clubs feeling that they deserved to be compensated for losing the registration and playing ability of a particular player. The key difference between this system and the transfer market today is that players were unable to move for free when their contract expired. The clubs had the bargaining power and could decide to retain the player's registration and offer him a contract, usually a one-year deal, at least as good as his expiring deal, or wait for another club to offer a transfer fee deemed suitable to buy out the player's registration. In terms of sporting integrity, this legislative change halted club hopping and was designed to benefit the smaller clubs who could keep their better players or receive hefty compensation in return for losing them. There were also maximum and minimum salary caps to control player wages and protect clubs' financial stability. The pendulum of power was now firmly on the side of the clubs. The system effectively allowed the clubs to hold a monopoly over the player's registration, with any transfer requiring the approval of both the regulatory body, the FA, and the club holding the player's registration. That being said, owners were still fanatically obsessed with chasing footballing glory, which meant that the maximum wage cap was often illegally broken by the club directors, desperate to entice and reward the biggest talents. The Players' Union, now known as the Professional Footballers Association, had a bitter relationship with the Football League during the 1900s, threatening strikes and campaigning, which had the minimal effect of a steady, slow increase of the maximum wage. It was no surprise when top-quality players like John Charles and Jimmy Greaves went abroad in the 1950s, lured by superior pay. The 1960s, famous for its hippie culture and freedom movements, saw the first real change in direction for the pendulum. The first impactful instance was the Ministry of Labour's abolition of the maximum wage in English football in 1961, following the threat of more strike action from the PFA. This gave players more bargaining power in terms of pitting clubs against each other for the highest wage offer. It also meant that players were able to put themselves on the transfer list if they rejected the terms of their employing club's new contract, whilst crucially still being paid during the player's search for a new club. The second tide-turning moment occurred in 1963. George Eastham requested a transfer from Newcastle United in 1959, and after the club refused, Eastham decided not to sign the retaining contract offered. With the help of the PFA and its chairman Jimmy Hill, Eastham finally got his move to Arsenal in 1960 after a publicity war. The PFA pushed the case to court for further amendments to the retain and transfer system. Judge Wilberforce ruled in favour of Eastham, and the football authorities were forced to rejig the system so that players reaching the end of their contract could leave on a free transfer if the employing club failed to offer a new contract at least as favourable as the expiring deal. Clubs still held the majority of influence when it came to transfers and contracts, but players could now be paid more than ever, and if not offered a continuous or upgraded contract, were free to move without being held hostage for a suitable transfer fee. After more PFA campaigning, 1977 saw freedom of contract introduced. where a player, having fulfilled his contractual obligations, was free to make the best deal he could with any club offering terms. The club holding the player's registration was entitled to a compensation fee if they offered a new contract, which was at least as favourable as the last. A tribunal system was also established to fix a transfer price if the holding club and a bidding club could not agree on a deal. At this point, the pendulum seemed more central than it ever had been before, with both the players and clubs enjoying a certain amount of bargaining power. The next revelation, however, blew the doors off the retain and transfer system, enabling the modern transfer market to be born. The last barrier being the necessity for a transfer fee despite a player's contract expiring. Outside of football, the European Union signed the Maastricht Treaty in 1992, which allowed the freedom of labour movement across the continent. This set the stage for Jean-Marc Bosman to change football seismically. In 1990, RC Liège, Bosman's then club, offered him a contract with a reduced salary, from 120,000 francs to 30,000, but French club Dunkirk offered Bosman 100,000 francs. Liège denied Bosman the transfer over concerns that the rival club could not afford his transfer fee. Bosman took Liège, the Belgian FA and UEFA to the European Court of Justice on the grounds that they had unlawfully restricted his labour market mobility, which was against Article 39 of the European Treaty, and Bosman won. The aftermath laid the groundwork for the transfer system as it is today. Foreign player quotas within UEFA competitions were dismantled, and a complete freedom of contract for players moving between countries within the EU was established. Players were no longer held hostage by the registration buyout transfer fees when their contract expired. As a result, wages started to inflate due to increased player bargaining power. European football leagues drastically increased in diversity, and clubs started offering longer-term contracts, 3, 4, 5 years being the norm, in the hope of wresting some control back. Transfer fees were no longer related to a player's registration, instead being a method of buying a player out of his contract with his employing club. And there's no doubt that the bargaining pendulum of power is now comfortably with the players. The clearest indication of this is the rise in prominence of agents. Agents, unsurprisingly, are better at negotiating complicated financial documents than football players, and so it became essential for players to hire agents to protect themselves from clubs who were desperate to take advantage of their new unprivileged position. The balance of power is now at a delicate stage. With clubs having lost much of their previous vice-like grip, there is more of an unwritten rule of respect between players and owners. Players willingly sign longer contracts so that clubs can extract a fee if they move on in the future, and clubs will generally allow players to move if they express the desire for pastures new. Certain cases like the Neymar deal, however, threaten that respect.